Hey everyone, how are you doing? Um, this is Erica Hines from Black Women Thriving. Here to do we do a monthly LinkedIn Live um, where we talk about um, different topics having to do with that impact or thriving at work. And this month we're over the course of like this quarter actually we're doing a lot of thinking and releasing stuff and trying to help people think a little bit deeper about access to opportunities. So um, in doing that, today's LinkedIn Live is going to be about a topic that we're calling Who Gets the Nod? And during the time that I spend talking about this, um, what we're really going to explore is in thinking about who gets the nod, meaning who gets access to that opportunity. We're going to talk about like the role of trust, the role of what is the role of trust in giving people access to opportunities. Um, why do people even want opportunities? And I'm actually being very specific in using the word opportunity as opposed to promotion because I feel like we're kind of in this very we're in developing territory here around promotion and opportunities. Like I think sometimes some people want like more money. And all of that, that is fine. I think some people want like growth opportunities. That's fine. The growth opportunity doesn't necessarily mean that they want a promotion and more responsibility. So I think as we talk about access to opportunities and you um, or maybe are able to take something from what I'm saying, that, you think about how, in the context of if you work in an organization, um, how are you getting access to those opportunities? And if you're in a role where you are a leader and manager, how are you providing access to those opportunities? So let's get into it. Um, So I want to talk about, as I kind of just said a few minutes ago, I want to start out by talking about thinking about access to opportunity, not as an abstract value, but thinking about access, providing access to opportunities as like a developing practice, like specifically for you managers. Like, what is your like? How often are you providing access to opportunities for people? For example, like thinking about it from the vantage point of being a supervisor or a manager or a leader, like who gets seen, who gets named, who gets invested in your organizations. um and maybe you have like the names or the you can think of the people, but I want you to think a little bit deeper than that, like what are the traits that get rewarded, or um, who are more readily given access to opportunities. And then I want you to think about what are those traits that sometimes are overlooked. Okay. Um, the purpose of this conversation that I'm going to have with you isn't about shame or blame. It's really a conversation about recognizing patterns. And that's a lot of what we do at Black Women Thriving, which it's not to be esoterical or when I say that, but it's really like, okay, what is the pattern of behavior here that is happening inside of our organizations by people that are keeping people from thriving, right? So when I'm talking about like what is the pattern here, I want to help you. I want to help you to begin to recognize those patterns, name them, and then figure out how to shift them. Um, a- and the reason that I want to do that is because I don't believe that the old belief that it's everyone has access to the same opportunities. Like it's just not true. It's just not true. Um, I think we have kind of taken steps to be more fair in how opportunities are presented to folks. But at the end of the day, when it involves humans, um, And hopefully your organization has not completely given all decision making about HR over to AI. So there's still some human discretion involved in here. Um, that, you know, if we're going to have fairness, we need to sort of like make sure that we have some parameters in which we are making decisions that are fair. And when we are making fair decisions, um, we're helping our teams feel as though they have equal access to opportunities. And by doing that, the impact on our teams is that they feel energized, they feel hopeful, they feel connected to their own growth. And when we don't do that, right, when we're not making sure that we are finding ways to offer up opportunities across the board to people, that can lead to burnout. That can lead to feeling invisible, and it can feel to people checking out, right? And you know, bottom line, that means to lower productivity. Here's one stat from our work at Black Women Thriving that sort of illustrates that, particularly around Black women. Um, our research showed that 78% of Black mentors you, who gives you that good advice, or sponsoring somebody who opens up their networks to you. With such a high number, that is like a gulf. That is a gulf of thinking about the access that um, centering Black women have to those next steps of their access, like their next steps to opportunities. So, in saying that to you, I want to offer you a moment to think about three questions. And those questions are uh, to think about in the last 6 months, and this is specifically for managers or leaders, but if you're a person who doesn't have those responsibilities, flip this to think about have these been provided to you? But one of them is in the last 6 months, who did you tap for a new opportunity if one was available? Again, that doesn't necessarily mean promotion. That means growth opportunity. It means, um, it means them getting professional development. It means um, it, it can mean any number of things. So who did you tap for that? Who have you offered visibility to? So who have you spoken about in those rooms that they weren't in? Right. So who have you given visibility to, mentorship or leadership exposure to in the last 6 months? And essentially, who got the nod? Who got the nod from you and why? Who have you had conversations about? Maybe because someone asked you, like, hey, I'll use myself as an example. What do you know about Erica? So who got the nod and why? In even the most well-meaning workplaces, the way that we give out access tends to follow a pattern. Unless even when we have this I'm not just thinking about, are you ready for it? I'm thinking about how will, if you're not ready, how will that reflect on me? And when we say people aren't ready, what do we really mean by that? Not ready for what? Not ready because of what? And who gets to set that standard? So, as we're thinking about giving people access to opportunities, we really actually have to do a little bit more than we have to do a gut check. We have to do a gut check with, this is when we were talking about biases, which I know that we're not supposed to say anymore, but I get to say it because I want to. But when we're doing that sort of gut check with ourselves, when we're thinking about, again, we're talking about access to opportunities, who are we giving that ability to grow, to have that growth? Um, we have to do a gut check of like just making sure that we're not just immediately leaning into our comfort, our trust, our proximity to that person, and that we are actually trying to be as expansive as possible. Okay, we're trying to look beyond what is naturally right next to us and in front of us. Because when we don't do that, I want to talk about the expense that it costs for folks who sometimes feel as though they are in these rooms when they're not in these rooms, that they can feel like they're invisible. Um, and that can look like not always getting the promotion, not always getting the growth opportunity. And when that happens for a long period of time, people start to internalize that invisibility. Um, and in internalizing that invisibility, what they might actually also be internalizing is that they don't get burnt out. And this even applies in terms of the topic that we're talking about now, which is access to opportunities. Overperformance leads to burnout. Overperformance because you think that you have to continually just grind and grind and grind to be noticed uh, leads to burnout. And when we're thinking about it from that vantage point, burnout ceases to be an individual failure. It is actually like it's like a red light of alarm. It's actually a systemic issue and a systemic failure. Failure is a strong word, but I'm going to say it anyways. So from an organizational standpoint, thinking about access to opportunities and thinking about, the cost of that. And again, thinking about it as like a systems failure, what does it impact? It not just impacts a person's well-being, as I've just spent time talking about burnout, but ultimately that also becomes a retention issue. It becomes um, it can become a recruitment issue if people are like, this is a place where you just go and you grind and you burn out. It is a trust issue, as I mentioned earlier. Um, so all of these things become intertwined. Okay. So I want to talk about what can you do to shift how you are approaching giving access to opportunities. And I want to offer you some suggestions. So the suggestions that I wrote down here that I'm going to read from is like, if you are a manager or leader, here is a practice that maybe you should try in the next few weeks. Be able to feel as though they are working in places where they get a sense of vitality and where they feel like they're learning. And there are other factors, but like those are the two main factors. So it's about growth, that sense of vitality. When people feel like they have a path forward uh, and it's one that they want, then they tend to stay. And when they don't, when they feel like they don't have that path, when they see themselves being passed over, when they feel like they have to overperform, um, they tend to shrink and sometimes they tend to disappear. So to us, this idea of access to opportunity is like an indicator of how well you are doing as an organization in creating positive conditions where your folks feel like they're thriving. So I want to say thank you. That I think that if we really, actually, I'm gonna take that back. I want to end this by saying that every month I say that I believe that thriving is possible. And I think that thriving is possible even in the midst of the chaos that we are working and living in. Um, I don't promise that thriving is easy, um, but I do think that getting to thriving, moving closer to creating a thriving environment for yourself, creating your own thriving environment in terms of your workplace, it's worthwhile. It gives you that that um, that place to sort of come back to in the midst of all of this. So I thank you. I want to say that if this is